basically what we were doing is doing a bit of a fundraising trip. Really, we run the website, and we're trying to raise a bit of money for National Independent Venues Association.
Amazing.
And Musicians on Call, who sort of send musicians around.
Yeah, I've done that quite a bit. Yeah,
I'm a volunteer.
Yeah,
for them
it's
in
so
Chicago.
moving to do that.
It really is.
Powerful.
Right? Like that isn't that like, to me, when I do that, that's exactly what music is for.
It's a healing art. It really is.
Healing, take someone out of where they are at that moment.
100%. Yeah.
So yeah, we set off in New York. This is our first stop. We've got 9 others all the way across the LA.
That's exciting, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I'm doing it on a motorcycle, which seemed like a good idea at the time, but after 500 miles in the last 2 days.
You feeling it? Your body feeling it?
Feeling it on my shoulders.
Yeah.
So thanks so much
for
taking
my pleasure.
And let me know if there's anything you particularly want to hit on, because I was listening all the way to your new album, Subtitles for Feelings. So I've been really enjoying that, and I guess I wanted to start off with. So you had a fantastic first album, and suddenly all of this popularity and fame, and then you come into sort of a sophomore album.
Yeah.
How did you approach it?
Well, I would say State of the Heart, my debut record, was about 20 years to the beginning, you know, so a lot of context, a lot of history, a lot of time it took to kind of get to the beginning, you know. So by the time that happened and I had this body of work, it was an interesting intersection of where do I go from here? If I've mined my life to this point, how do I keep going? And I realized that a lot of State of the Heart was looking back, you know, and I went on this journey of regarding time and understanding the present moment a little deeper. And I realized that you can look back from here and connect to yourself there. Like if this is all one present moment, maybe there's more of a correspondence between yourself. And that's where Subtitles for Feelings came from. It's where this kind of notion of ever-present being came from, and it really, really reflects in music, and it became this really big inspiration point for me, a way of life for me, and just an amazing inspiration source. So that's how the album happened. But there was that kind of like, how do I do this thing? But like anything, you live the question, and the answer reveals itself. You know?
And it is funny because I've heard that. I can't remember that's a quote from some musician, isn't it? Which is like, the first album takes you your whole life to write, and then they're like, now write this album 2 in the next year.
It's intense. It's a pressure cooker, and I think that's where like the mindfulness comes in, and the understanding that like all these things are just snapshots. It's just the right now. And I think that's a beautiful way. You have to let go. And nothing's ever done. I never felt like none of these records are done. They're just like, hey, let's give it away now. And it did feel to me like this album particularly, there's kind of an arc to it, like not true narrative arc, but did you go into it with an idea of what you wanted 100%. Yeah. So Subtitles for Feelings is the idea that life is the movie. This is it. You know, and you go back with time, with context, and you revisit these scenes in your life. You rewind the tape, and you translate the subtitles and the scenes for what they're really trying to say. So there's a subtitle right now I can't quite translate. I need time, and I'll look back on this and I'll be able to really understand it. And that's the core curriculum of this record. It's inviting people to rewind their tapes, to watch their movies, to connect to themselves. And in a way, you know, it is a concept album if you want it to be and if you need it to be. But I wanted it to feel non-linear, and wherever you dive in, you can connect to it. But it certainly comes from a very specific inspiration source for me, and it's my musing with time. And
so, as a musician, so when you started, did you start on guitar? And then when you started playing guitar, how quickly did you start writing?
It was pretty quick. So my dad was a guitar player. He really instilled that in me. But at the same time, I mean, so I was like 4 or 5 when I picked up a guitar. So by 7, I was really playing. And then I just found my guitar heroes, the whole thing. But my dad instilled in me like a great solo only matters in the context of a great song. And that stuck with me. So I was writing as early as I can remember. And I think by the time I was 12 or 13, I was working on my first album, and it was original material. So it was always important to me to tell my story. I did know, I kind of had this foresight. I was remembering ahead, like it's going to take some time to have the kind of stories I want to have. Life has to happen. But I invite like any young musician or artist or guitar player or whatever your instrument is to try to write your music, because at the end of the day you're archiving this moment, and it's important and it's cathartic, and it's really helped me kind of mold myself as a person. Like no matter what the music's done, it's a worthy pursuit to write it down.
That's nice to hear, and it's nice to hear you talk about that second one that way, because I've actually spoken about this in other interviews. It was really interesting to me watching that. Have you seen the Jason Isbell documentary?
I haven't seen it yet.
It's out.
Yeah.
And the pressure that he put on himself during that album and the recording of that album, and I was like, man, because I always imagine, you know, I always look at it from the outside and think, it must be super cathartic writing songs and being able to express yourself that way. I never think about the kind of other side of it that goes along with it as well.
I think if you look at anything too closely, you get dizzy, you start to lose the plot. And when you have a guy like Jason, who's such an incredible wordsmith, the pressure to say it and articulate it in a way that is perfect, that's a really difficult task. I think you have to approach all these things with like, how can I write the most true thing I know? There's a great Hemingway quote. It's like, with writer's block, just write one true sentence. Right, the truest sentence you know, and that's enough. But you have to be gentle on yourself, and that, you know, writer's block is a real thing, and the time it takes to say something that really matters to you and is honest, you have to go out and live to write. I think that's so important. My first publisher told me that. He's like, you have to live to write. And take time to live.
And do you, so when it came to this album, or typically when you're writing, do you put time aside? Are you like, I'm going to write now, or will you be out and something will come to you and then you'll go in, or is it a mixture of?
It's a mixture of all of it. I think for me, this whole pursuit has been about revelations. It's about, what are these questions I'm asking? For me, I'm really contending with time in my life right now. I'm 31. I'm at a place where I'm young enough to still feel like I can hold on to like some of my childhood, but I'm old enough to be very conscious of how quickly time's moving in this chapter. And I think for me, all these songs came from questions, and again, living these questions, and with my brother, our adventures and finding ourselves, you know, whether it's just like in a kitchen in Kingston, New York, you know, in the middle of the night, just musing on life, and him just telling me that, he's like, I'm happy for you, and I'm happy for you. And I said, Connor, that's like subtitles for feelings, because so much is behind that I'm happy for you, because we have this shared experience. So I think for me, like, all these songs have just come from asking these questions, and I find some deep catharsis and revelation in the rabbit hole. I got the song Go Getter on the record. It's kind of like the crux track of like, just jump down the rabbit hole, ask the questions, and you're gonna find something. You know, something
will be there. It does. It's interesting as well, because that I noticed after 30. I mean, I'm 45 now. It's as though the clock runs faster. And I think, but you know, part of what's driven us to do this as well is, like, my feeling is, you know, things can easily become routine at a certain point, and as soon as that happens, I think you go into sort of autopilot. So let's do something totally out of the ordinary, and you know,
let's take that motorcycle trip across the country. Let's do these things. You know, I actually think you can stretch a second, you know, way longer than we actually do. And it's impossible to always be in that headspace, because we'll lose our minds if you're that ever present. But I'm trying to live a long life, but I want to live a wide life. I want to take the moment and stretch it as far as I can. I think when we invite ourselves, I call it regarding time, to regard the moment. Oftentimes we're disregarding it. We're not really recognizing it's here. And that's also why I find ordinary moments so extraordinary when they're recognized. I just moved back to New York. I just go around with my camera, and I just see life happening. And when I watch it back, I'm like, how beautiful is this? It's so simple. I think just do your best to try to take at least one moment in every day to say, I'm here. And how'd I get here? And
I think I totally agree with you. I think just stopping every now and again and looking around you. And I've caught myself even doing it, you know, when I'm doing something totally out of the ordinary, where I should be engaged all the time, even sitting on the bike, right? Once it gets past a certain point, I'm just like, it's going by, and then I'll look around suddenly, and I'll be like, man, look what's around me, because 100%. Some of the journey to like today has been spectacular.
You just gotta smell the flowers. It's cliche for a reason. And we all don't know what this means, except that like it feels really good to be here, no matter what the color of human condition is. And it's everything. Life is just full of everything. That's why the music and being back on the road is so special to me right now. Like, we're 2 shows in, and I'm just so full of love with the connection of just, you know, realizing in real time that we are all the same. We're different, but we're the same, and that's why music is the great connector. You know?
It really is. In I guess, line with what we're doing at the minute, I mean, what do places like this mean to you? I mean, to me, and that's one of the reasons we're doing the trip. These places are everything, right, to the music industry. And I guess a follow-on question to that, I want just to think about afterwards would be, how much, I know it's different, but do you enjoy more or less recording the music and coming up with the music, or standing on that stage and being in a room with everybody?
So I think to hit on the places first, the space is so precious, it's so important. You know, in considering the idea that time is just one present moment, everything exists at once, that means this room is full. It's full when it's empty, it's full of memories, it's full of intention, and I think, you know, there's this idea of the third place. Have you heard of this?
No.
So, you know, you have your place of work, you have your home, then you have the third place. And the third place is where you go for a happening. It's where you go to feel connected. It's where, it's just kind of like where musing happens. It's where inspiration is. And music venues are absolutely third places. It's where we go. We find each other, we find ourselves. So I think having a space to go is just so important. And having a space that also feels approachable for anybody is also very important. So yeah, you know, that's why it's special to hold court in spaces, and why when I get to kind of host that energy, it's very special. When I grew up, like, you know, rooms like this, like I grew up really doing the blues thing as a kid, and just playing music. And so whenever I walk into spaces like this, I just feel like this is where I come from. I come from that like moving air in real time, and like that it's here and it's gone. So when I make records, I find it to be a challenge to say this is like one take, that's the forever pressing. That's it. And then in this latest record, Subtitles for Feelings, I really tried to capture the moment the best I could. So like, if I wrote a song that day and I wanted to cut the vocal, I tried to keep the vocal. I tried to just because that you're so close to the intention, and the more you re-record, the more you try again, it might sound better, but it might not be the same, you know, honest feedback. So I think I've tried to echo that in the album, like what I take from the live room, and I think they're both equally as important, but it's, you know, you need one for the other. Like, make your records, like put your heart into it, and then go crusade for them.
Then go and enjoy.
And then you see people, and they say, hey, this is what it means to me, and you realize it's not mine anymore, it's ours. And this is where ours happens.
I think that must be the most satisfying, looking from the outside, that must be the most satisfying part. I would love, you know, I play music, but not, you know, as a hobby kind of thing, but I would be happy if I wrote one thing and someone said to me, that connected, just one person, like, that connected with me for this reason. It might not even be what I've written the song about. Like,
doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly, that's it.
I talk a lot about, like, amongst my friends and just in the, it's an interesting time to be making music. It's an interesting time to be here doing anything creative, and understanding what success metrics are anymore. It's just, it's an algorithm world, it's different. And I always say, like, you need to recognize when you change a human spirit, when you affect somebody, that's success. That's a metric that just immediately hits the top of the meter. If you're blessed enough to continue to like compound that with multiple people, with crowds, with you know, genres of people who listen to certain music, whatever it is, it's so successful. It's such a worthy pursuit, and I think we need to remember that this is like a collective. It's like mutual aid, right? Like music, that's at its best. We're here for like a collective catharsis, and they were asking me on the ride last night, like, what's it feel like to have people sing these songs back, because they're screaming them back to us. And I had to think about it, because it is an interesting question. It's almost like voyeuristic in a way. It's like they're staring at me in my room, like when that happened. It's powerful. But yeah, I think that's a great point about that is success, and we need to remind like all musicians, all creatives, that really is the point, and anything else is cherry on top. And yes, like it's fun to climb a ladder, but
I think it was one of the things that like volunteering for Musicians on Call as well. That just put that like clear in my eye line. Is, you know, you can have someone having their worst day in that bed, and a musician walks into the room and says, you know, do you want to hear some music? Oh yeah, I would love to. And it changes that person's day, and you can see it in their face. And it like, I know there'll be people who maybe aren't so into music. They'll be like, oh, that's too much. No, it really does. I've seen it happen, and I've been in rooms like this myself when I've been having the worst time and come in and walked out like a changed person because of the experience I've had. So I'm all about that. Like the power of music, I think there's that Tom Petty quote, right? Like it's the only real magic he ever came across in his life, and I believe that. Like
it's just having done the Musicians on Call as well, you hit on the head. Like that's a specific type of translation in real time, and you get to watch this change happen. It's like the water when it's around. Well, I don't know the frequencies or whatever it is. You can see, energy in water and the crystals, and like you see that in people. Yeah, man, it is a magic, and it's something to be held sacred. And I think that I'm just trying to treat these shows and the space of wherever you are finding my music, I'd actually like to treat it the same way. Whether it's a hospital room or it's your bedroom or the drive home, we are all contending with the living, and it really is a worthy thing to try to like help in that way, because it's helped us. That's why we're here.
Absolutely.
Right? We're talking about it because we love it. It's helped. We were those people.
It made us feel. That's the other thing, right? It's like, and I don't think it should be a bad thing to say that. Like I get something out of it as well. I go around there and I see that, and I'm like, that's amazing, and it makes me feel better. And I know that's not the point of it, but it does.
It has to start with you, and that's huge. To be there for each other, right? Is the saying, right? But when you think about yourself and your timeline, and if it is all a present moment, that you can kind of make sense of your story, and if intuition is remembering ahead, if it's like, I know I'm up there, you have to also look out for yourself and be there for your other selves, like all across the timeline. And I think in that way, starting there is how you ripple out to others, because we're all work in progress. But we're able to love, I think, more clearly and better if we start here in the mirror,
So I know I've only got you for 20 minutes.
You're fine. We can go as long as you want.
So the one thing I did want to ask you. What a list of collaborators on this album. Man, it's amazing. So,
thanks, man.
like Foy Vance, who's a phenomenal songwriter. Butch Walker, who I love. And I wanted to ask you a couple of things about Butch Walker, because I spoke to a singer called Suzanne Santo. I don't know if you know her. She was in a band called Honey Honey.
Okay.
When she did her first solo album, Butch produced it.
Okay.
And I remember interviewing her, and she was just gushing about like working with him as a producer. So I know he produced and co-wrote, right, one of the tracks. Yeah.
So we co-produced 3 tracks on the record, and we co-wrote one of them.
Yeah.
Butch is a guy that I've looked up to for a long time. So I found Butch's music when I was, I think, early high school.
Yeah.
And I was drawn to his vulnerability and his just like raw character and how he approached what he did. And funny enough, I found his autobiography that he wrote when I was a freshman in college. It's incredible.
Yeah, I'll read that.
And he laughs. He's like, "You're one of the 10 people who read it," but I'm not. I mean, many people have read it, but he's such an honest collaborator. He's a very real human. Like he lives with that on his sleeve, and I love that about Butch. And when I get to sit down and talk to him, and kind of we have a lot of parallels in where we come from and how we play guitar and what we're trying to say.
He's a monster.
He's a monster player. And we always joke, we were watching all the old 80s videos of him and the long hair and the shred, and I'm like, you did it, man. Yeah. Like I wanted to do that.
And he's doing the new album with me.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Yeah. So, but Butch is he's a beautiful man. He's a beautiful collaborator. He's so giving of his time and his energies, and like what I love about Butch is he helped me be more present in the production. To really not just say, hey, it's done, but like, hey, that felt right.
Yeah.
Let's keep moving, and that was really good for me, and that lasted across the project for me and other things I've done. Yeah.
Was it important for you to be involved in the production as well?
Well, that's like one of my how do I say this? For my creative process, that's kind of how I start. Like, I produce my records because it's my fingerprint, but I look at music cinematically.
Yeah.
So I found a lot of my favorite music growing up in film and TV.
Yeah.
And when I started producing when I was 13, I think I got Logic when I was like 13, and I was making records ever since. And I like to sit there alone with like the idea and the feeling and try to paint the color and try to say, what does this scene sound like and look like? And production for me is this kind of amazing way to see sound.
Yeah.
Right? So when I collaborate with people, I love finding friends who kind of say, hey, did you think about this color? I see this, and then you blend.
Yeah.
And the blend is so much fun.
Yeah.
So production for me, and like, you know, I'm producing some other records too for some other artists, and like, I love it so much, and I think that's another part of my creative pursuit that I'm just kind of cracking the code with, you know?
It's like another instrument. I think being 100%. A producer and learning how to record is like learning a musical instrument.
Yeah, and I've learned from so many great producers in my life, and a lot of this is just like, it's just human dynamics, and there is an art to it, and collaboration, I think, is the key to all great things. You know, and you can make something amazing on your own, but even that was a collaboration with a lot of life, right?
Oh yeah, with life.
Yep.
And then I guess final question. In that sense, when you are collaborating on a song, how do you typically? I mean, do you go with the seed of the song to someone that you're going to collaborate with, and then you build it out from there? Do you do it together, or are you sending?
It depends. I mean, a lot of times, I'm kind of I have the thing. I have the shell and the structures, and kind of like just that's where I'm musing. I'm in the middle of the night, just doing my thing, and like a Butch, for instance. Like, I'll bring some stems to Butch, and we'll say, all right, like, we're either going to just kind of tidy this up and add some elements, or like with Wild Horses Running, we wrote that with Melissa. She's in the band too, and that was ground up. Just like, hey, let's put this on the floor and just make some music. So it really depends. I did a lot of the record with my buddy John Green, who's a wonderful Englishman, and an incredible, just like savant musician. And what we like to do is, you know, most of these songs that happened on this record, we were supposed to be working on something else, and John will play something, and I'll just be like, not again. And then we'll just veer this way, and all of a sudden this thing will bloom, and I'm recording. And then we chop it up, put it together. So that's like some real-time painting. A lot of it's painting and unplanned. And I think I've been surprised by basically every song on this record of just how did that happen? It just happened. I feel like songs are fossils, and we're just here to brush them off. They've always been there. And at its best, that's what it's felt like with this project. And I think the next project might be something a little more stripped I'm going to work on, and just again in the production pursuit of like, how can I say the most with the least? And, you know.
Yeah, I've actually spoken to a couple of people who've gone back and forth on that and done a very. There's a guy who lives in Chicago. He's actually originally from the Isle of Man, called Davey Knowles, who's a great. You know Davey, right?
He's great.
So we've spoken to Davey. I've spoken to him 4 or 5 times.
Sure.
He is one of the best guitar players I've ever seen.
He's incredible.
But have you heard his new album?
No, I have
not
yet.
So he's done a new album called If I Should Wander.
Okay. And
it's literally just him with his national guitar, one microphone, and that's it. The whole album. Songs. It's one of the most beautiful records, honestly.
That's happening, right? I mean, these shows, like, we're doing a 4 songs segment of the set where I got this baritone acoustic, old stock guitars in LA. The Rubber Bridge. I got one from Ruben, and
nice.
Man, it's got a magic thing, and just this part of the show is just quickly becoming my favorite part, and I'm just able to hold the room with it's the song, it's the message. So I'm really inspired, and I think that's something I'm going to I can't wait to dive into after this.
Interesting.
Yeah, man.
It's interesting that
it's a cyclical thing. It goes around, you know.
And then you mentioned, last question, I promise, because I'm a guitar nerd.
Yeah, I'm good.
Like, you mentioned growing up, you know, and you had your guitar. Who were your guitar heroes?
Yeah, man, it's a long list. I think for like hearing like my dad, number one, B.B. King. B.B. King was just like, I remember watching. You know, it was like Live at the Regal was the first time I heard him play. I just thought, what was that? You know, and talk about saying the most with the least. Like that was impactful. Gary Moore, huge Gary Moore fan. Stevie, obviously, Clapton. But then I also I was really into the virtuosos of Steve Vai, Satriani, and Yngwie, all these guys. I love the shred. I grew up loving. So for me, I was just like hardcore blues head, but I was doing 8-finger tapping, and it's so funny because now I'm just I'm just me, and you know, been playing guitar for 3/4 of my life, and I'm on stage like doing a nice blues, and all of a sudden I'll go into a dive bomb and I'll be like,
what's going on?
Sorry guys, this is where I come from. It's so much fun, but that's you know, you never stop learning, and I'll say this in the process of. I've been playing guitar for such a long time, and when you start really young at anything, like it's an interesting relationship with the thing, right? There was a point in this record where I had a night where I started listening to those old records, the ones that made me. I had things I hadn't heard in a long time. I was like, oh, that's where that lick came from. Oh, you're still doing that one, like, and then you're just like, oh, playing guitar is memory. It's remembering. It's muscle memory. There's a moment that came to you, and it's really special when you think about that. And that's been a bit of a reinvigorating pursuit and like perspective of playing guitar. And you know, every night on this tour, I brought out. My dad has an '89 Clapton Strat.
Oh, nice.
That was, it was the first guitar I ever saw, and it was just like this really special thing. I was like, what is that? I'm like 5. I don't know what this is, but I want to touch it. I want to hold it. And this is the first time it's ever seen a show, and it's a really special moment in the set. And, you know, so just revitalizing the inspiration there too.
I like your dad's line as well that, you know, a solo doesn't mean anything unless it's in the context, because one of my favorite of all time guitar players is Mike Campbell.
Oh,
because he kind of writes his solos are like another line of lyrics
100%.
effectively. And that there's a real genius to being able to do that,
100%.
to have a solo that fits a song so well.
Yeah, and it just continues the conversation. It's not, it doesn't like full stop it, and then there's this moment. And even in like instrumental guitar like music, I'm a big fan of, you know, like Andy Timmons, for instance. I don't know if you know Andy.
I know Andy Timmons.
Huge inspiration.
It's great,
Oh my gosh. But like, I believe him. You know?
But that's the genius, I think, because there's a thing about with the virtuoso guys. I mean, someone like Vai or Satriani, what they do well is make you forget that it's just an instrumental record. Right? They're doing something different, and there's some amazing playing in there, but also it holds your attention.
It's
because
not the point.
The amazing playing is like. That's great, but it becomes like an athetic sport after a while.
We go to G3 for that, you know?
Exactly.
No, it's true. It doesn't matter what it is, and if it's classical pianist or whatever. It's fun to watch those movies.
Yeah, it is.
That's all. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much,
man. Thank you for having me, brother.
I really
Thanks for coming in. Good luck
I think
on the trip.
we'll probably see you on the road. I think we're going to cross paths.
Amazing.
In a couple of different
any city you're at, let me know. I'll get you in.
Cool.
That's awesome. I appreciate your attention, man. Great.